Argentina should be one of the richest countries on earth. 100 years ago, it was. In the early 1900s, Argentina was richer than France, richer than Germany, a magnet for immigrants chasing a better life. Today, it has defaulted on its debts 9 times and destroyed the value of its own currency over and over again. So what went wrong? Why does Argentina keep collapsing? And could 2026 finally be the year it breaks the cycle? Let's start with where things stand right now, because it's genuinely strange. In 2023, Argentina's inflation hit 211% a year. Prices were nearly tripling. Then a radical new president, Javier Milei, took over, promising shock therapy, brutal spending cuts, and an end to the money printing. 2.5 years later, inflation has fallen to around 33%. The economy is growing again, and poverty has dropped from over 40% to under 30%. For a country this broken, that is remarkable. But Argentines have seen promising starts before and watched them fall apart. To understand why this time is such a gamble, you have to understand the disease underneath, and it always begins in the same place. At the heart of almost every Argentine crisis is one simple habit. The government spends far more money than it collects. For decades, governments won elections by promising generous things, subsidies that made energy and transport artificially cheap, expanding pensions, waves of public sector jobs, popular promises. The problem was they never raised enough in taxes to pay for them. The result was a chronic budget deficit, a permanent gap between what the state spent and what it earned. Now, a normal country plugs that gap by borrowing. But here is Argentina's trap. Lenders, burned so many times before, charge it brutal interest or refuse to lend at all. So when a government won't cut spending and can't borrow enough, it reaches for the one tool it fully controls. It prints money. The central bank simply creates new pesos and hands them to the government. And printing money to pay the bills is the oldest recipe for inflation there is. Suddenly, you have more money chasing the same amount of goods, so prices rise. Do it year after year, and you don't get mild inflation. You get the kind that eats a paycheck before the month is even over. And that is where the spiral begins. As prices climb, ordinary Argentines learn a hard lesson. Holding pesos is like holding melting ice. So the moment they get paid, they rush to swap pesos for something that holds its value, usually US dollars. But everyone dumping pesos at once pushes the peso down even further. A weaker peso makes imported goods more expensive, which pushes prices up again, which makes people flee the peso even faster. Governments try to fight the symptoms. They freeze prices, which just empties the shelves. They ban people from buying dollars, which just creates an illegal black market. Argentines even have a nickname for the unofficial rate, the blue dollar. None of it fixes the real problem. It just hides it, while trust in the currency quietly dies. Then there is the debt. To cover those endless deficits, Argentina also borrows from abroad, usually in dollars, because no one wants to lend it money in pesos. And that is a trap with a delayed fuse. When the peso eventually collapses, that dollar debt suddenly costs several times more to repay. Eventually, the country simply can't, so it defaults. It stops paying its debts. Argentina has done this 9 times, and each default slams the door on cheap borrowing even harder, which pushes the government right back toward the printing press. The cycle feeds itself. So if everyone can see how the story ends, why does Argentina keep doing it? The answer is part politics, part psychology. The politics, fixing the problem means austerity, cutting subsidies, slashing jobs, enduring a painful recession before anything gets better. That is a fast way to lose an election. Spending money you don't have, on the other hand, buys votes today and sends the bill to tomorrow. So government after government chose the easy path. And the psychology is even more powerful, because distrust becomes self-fulfilling. Argentines have been burned so many times that at the very first hint of trouble, they pull their money out and run for dollars. But that stampede is exactly what triggers the next collapse. The country is trapped in a loop of broken trust. It can't borrow cheaply, can't hold its value, and can't calm its own citizens, because no one believes, deep down, that this time will be different. Which brings us back to 2026 and Milei's enormous bet. His plan attacks the root, not the symptoms. Balance the budget by cutting spending hard. Stop the central bank from printing money to fund the government. And slowly, painfully, rebuild the trust that decades of crises destroyed. There is even a windfall helping him. A massive shale oil and gas field called Vaca Muerta is turning Argentina into an energy exporter, bringing in badly needed dollars. And the early results are real. Inflation down from 211% to around 33%. Growth returning. Poverty falling. But so is the pain. Deep wage cuts, a sharp recession, real hardship for millions. And here's the thing, history keeps whispering. Argentina has started reforms like this before and abandoned them the moment the pain grew too great and voters revolted. The question was never whether the plan works on paper. It is whether the politics can survive the plan. So why should any of this matter to you if you don't live in Buenos Aires? Because Argentina is the world's clearest, most painful lesson in what happens when a government spends money it doesn't have and prints the difference to cover it. It is the case study every economist and central banker points to. It shows in real life why fiscal discipline and an independent central bank aren't boring technicalities. They are the difference between a stable currency and a worthless one. And those same forces, deficits, debt, inflation, and trust, quietly shape the value of the money in your pocket, wherever you happen to live. So will 2026 be the time Argentina finally breaks the cycle? Watch three things: whether the government keeps its budget balanced, whether inflation keeps falling, and whether the reforms survive the next election. History says stay skeptical. The early numbers say just maybe. Either way, Argentina remains the greatest cautionary tale in the world about money, trust, and the price of the easy way out. If this made the news make more sense, that is exactly what this channel is for. The money story behind the headlines. Subscribe and we'll break down the next one together.